Sideshow presents Get Super with Joshy G. Featuring today's special guest, Josh James. It's time to get super.
Hey everyone, what's going on? I'm Joshy G, and today I have the one and only Josh James from the band Stick to Your Guns joining us for this really fun episode of Get Super. I'm super excited to talk to Josh. We've obviously been friends for a very long time, and he is quite the storyteller, which you guys will soon find out. Josh, how you doing, my friend? How are things? Are you staying home, staying safe, staying healthy, most importantly?
Yeah, outside's on fire, so I have to stay home right now. But yeah, you know what? My wife and I are always discussing, like, obviously the same things that everybody's discussing. All the current events that are going on in the world. But we've been trying to really focus on finding the silver linings. So, and there are a few, and I think that kind of is on personal levels. You know, like us being able to spend more time with each other and stuff like that. And me doing a bunch of chores around the house. But yeah, I would say all in all, personally, I'm doing great. I definitely can't complain.
Well, that's good because you are in a band, and at this time of year, you would normally or typically be on tour, so you get to spend more time at home, and most importantly, more times doing chores. What is your favorite chore around the house now that you have all this time at home?
I've really became a slave to painting. So now I'm I'm also like very detail oriented. So there's been a lot of times where anything that I've finished doing, like I've built some furniture and laid some tile and, did all this other stuff. And then I would step back and be like, I'm done. And then I'd go, this looks like shit. And then just have to redo it all over again. But it doesn't matter because no one's ever coming over anyway. And, maybe 2022, I'll have everything done. It'll look good by then.
And then I can come over and check it out?
Yeah, of course.
2022.
Just stay 6 feet away. Wear your mask. I'm going to take your temperature before you come in.
All right. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait. So you are an artist, both on stage and apparently off stage, because you look at these rock stars that you see on, MTV or any of these shows, YouTube, whatever, and they have people doing this for them and people doing that for them. And you are so humble, my friend. I love the fact that you're doing it all. And, are you any good at it? Would you say that if I needed something painted, I could hire you?
Yeah, hire me. I need a job.
So you grew up in Florida, right? You grew up in Florida.
Yeah.
What kind of got you into music? I mean, you have been in many bands, but you're currently in a band called Stick to Your Guns. But what was the draw that got you into music when you were growing up in Florida?
Like as a kid, things like Michael Jackson and Milli Vanilli, were cool because the songs were fun or whatever. But I wouldn't say that I was like a fan of music or like I was addicted to listening to something. Music wasn't really something that was ever turned on in my household that I grew up in. I grew up with my mom and stepdad. And it was mostly just like right-wing conservative Christian radio. And so they really don't have any great bangers of songs. So it really turned me on to it. When I would see my dad every once in a while, though, he was like a fucking rocker. So he'd always be blasting like AC/DC or Alice Cooper or Queen. And I was really into that. But I guess what got me into punk and hardcore was when I was a kid. I think I was in like the 4th grade. And my mom took me like a secondhand shop, and I had like $1.65, because that's probably what I got paid to mow the lawn at that time.
Exactly, $1.65.
$1.65, and so I found this shirt that had this giant skull on it, and I just thought that was cool because you're a kid, and I loved action movies, and skulls are cool. And I remember my mom's like, you can't get that. And I argued with her. I was like, you said I could get whatever I wanted with my $1.65. So I'm buying this shirt. And it turned out it didn't say it on there, but it was the Crimson Ghost. It was a Misfits shirt. And I had no clue that it was that. And then some older kid in the neighborhood was like, oh, you like the Misfits? And I'm like, I have no clue what you're talking about. And he gave me a mixtape And then I listened to it and I was like, whoa, this is awesome. Especially, at that age, a lot of the songs are like Teenagers from Mars and, Mommy, Can I Go Out and Kill Tonight? And like all this like really wild, like imaginative stuff. And so I really got into Misfits. And then from there, I kind of just started finding new bands. And then I really was into skateboarding as a teenager. And I think that like at that time, skateboarding and punk and hardcore kind of went hand in hand. So I'd find out, about bands through Thrasher magazine or through, like the 10 other kids at my school that listened to that type of music or skated, and just really kind of like fell in love with that. I identified to it really quickly, and and then now here I am talking to you.
Yeah, but would you say that once you started listening to the Misfits and all these other bands, what was the turning point for you to be like, oh, you know what? I want to actually be in a band. Like this is something that I maybe don't want to do for a living at that time because, we maybe don't think like that. But what was something where you're like, oh, I want to give it a shot. I want to be able to, whether it's sing or play guitar, play an instrument. What was the kind of the catalyst behind that?
I actually never really had that moment. My mom, who was more like a boss growing up, and I don't mean like my mom's boss. I mean, like, it was like I was her employee. The one like really motherly thing that she did, and my brother and I always talk about how out of character it was one day she just came to my brother and I and she goes, "You guys have to learn how to play instruments." And we're like, "What?" And she's like, "Yeah, saxophone and piano." And, at this time I'm in like 6th or 7th grade. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to play the saxophone. I'm going to get my ass kicked.
Well,
and,
just real quick. I play the saxophone, but that's
well, I was going to say, I actually wish I would have learned how to play the saxophone or the piano now, because it would be cool. But then I was like, no way. And so I was like, I'm only going to play guitar or drums. And then she's like, well, drums are too loud. And then later on, my brother ended up learning how to play drums, and she probably really regretted ever asking us or telling us to learn instruments, because then we're just in our rooms full blast, just making all this horrible racket. But so I started playing guitar, and again, some friends of mine play guitar, and we would sit around and kind of teach each other songs from other bands that we knew. And honestly, I think that was one of the big appeals of going and seeing like punk bands and going to a punk show. You would go watch a band play at a VFW hall or like in a mechanic's garage. And there was, and there was no stage, and there was no theatrics, and there was no show. It was just this like raw thing. And I think it was really easy for me as a child to like identify with that and go, oh, well, this guy's like a year older than me. Like I could do it too.
Yeah.
And then, so it was just this kind of like natural thing where I just asked some friends like, hey, let's start a band. And then I was just constantly in bands. And then, it slowly evolved from like playing some songs in a bedroom, writing songs, to then playing some shows, to then, recording some music, and then eventually, going on tour and this and that. But it was one of those things where I never thought about going to college. I never thought about having another career, because I think for the longest time, I was just under this impression that I was going to grow up and be a pro skater. And then just life would be, just this easy, chill thing.
Yeah.
And, but by the time I was in 10th or 11th grade, the band that I was in then was doing pretty good in our genre. And we had released a record, and then we had done a couple of summer tours, and I was the youngest guy in the band. So it turned out to be this conversation within the band that's like, oh, when Josh graduates next year, we'll just go on tour forever. And then that's just what I did until 2020.
That's crazy, right? So you're a senior in high school, you're in this band, and then you graduate, and then you're off to see the world.
Yeah. It was really, really quick. And I remember, like, I graduated in 2001. And so I remember right when I came home from tour was when 9/11 happened. So it was just like such a crazy year for me, because I had just gone and traveled around the world and started like being exposed to all these different ideas and different cultures and things like that. And then I get home and this thing happens. And I think that that touring for me has really been able to shape who I am in a lot of different ways. But I think the coolest thing about it is like the perspective that it's given to me about the entire world. Because growing up, you kind of grow up in a box, and the area that I grew up in was a very specific box. So it's really cool to be able to have that opportunity to experience so much through touring. Because like, whenever we go out, it's not like going on vacation. It's two different things. And you get to explore these cities and experience these cities in a completely different way than if I was decide to just like take a trip there.
Yeah. And it kind of stinks now because obviously travel is, non-existent, but it's going to make you appreciate tour when you eventually get to go back on tour and be like, oh man, I miss going to these cities. Oh, I miss going to this, my favorite coffee shop in this country. I obviously friends with a lot of wrestlers and they say the exact same thing. Maybe they're not on tour in a band, but they're also on tour. And the fact that they love traveling so much and they get to experience cities completely different than you would on vacation, I completely understand. Now, how did pop culture play a role in your upbringing? You obviously mentioned action movies, which we'll get into in a little bit, but like, what are some of the things that a young Josh James, besides skateboarding, besides Misfits, what were some of the things that you were into as a young child growing up, or maybe even a teenager?
Skateboarding and music really consumed the majority of my life. But outside of that, it's the generic things. It's food and film. So I've always been a little piggy, and I've always enjoyed enjoyed film. And like you said, specifically growing up as a kid, 80s and 90s action movies were just like, that was my jam, and so ninja shit, martial arts stuff. My best friend growing up, Justin, and I, at a time whenever we were kids, were trying to convince each other that we actually were ninjas. And we would have these contests to see who could walk through the grass as quietly as possible. And a few years ago, I was in Florida for Christmas, and I happened to see him, and he's like, "Hey, I got you a Christmas gift." And I opened him up, and he bought me a legitimate pair of ninja shoes.
Oh, really?
They're like the two-toed shoes that like buckle up all the way up your shin. I was like, this is unreal. So
did you try them in the grass? Were you quiet on the grass?
Yeah, I was so quiet.
10 years, 20 years later?
So quiet.
Oh,
still the quietest.
Oh, now, were there any things that you collected maybe as a young child? Were you into toys, collectibles? Did you have a favorite? Did you have a favorite thing? Obviously, maybe, you had your shirt, your Misfit shirts, maybe your guitar, but was there something that like a collectible or a toy that was near and dear to your heart?
When I was younger, it would have been G.I. Joes. Like, I loved G.I. Joe. And that probably, that went kind of hand in hand with action movies, because I was such a big Arnold fan. And when Van Damme started popping off and Steven Seagal, but Arnold was like, that was my shit. And so when I was actually like a younger kid, probably like, 9, 10, I thought, okay, when I grow up, I'm going to join the Marines. I'm going to smoke cigars and I'm going to go to prison. Because that's what I thought. Like, I was like, okay, I'm like, well, everything that Arnold does, it involves smoking cigars and being a Marine. And then I was like, and I like tattoos, and I'm pretty sure the only place you can get tattoos is in prison. Yeah. So those are my goals. But I think because of my love for Arnold movies, that's what really like got me into G.I. Joe. So I would, try to get as many G.I. Joes as I could. There was getting toys at my house was always a true mission. But yeah, so like I had tons of G.I. Joes, and I briefly went through a comic book phase. And what the most insane thing about the comic book thing is, like, at the time, my favorite comic book was Shazam. And so like I was blown away whenever they actually made a Shazam movie. And then I thought it also kicked ass. I was like, oh, this is a great flick. But yeah.
So G.I. Joe, Shazam. Now let's get into your love of action movies. What would you say is your Mount Rushmore of action movies?
There's not an opinion. It's just a fact. The greatest action movie of all time is Terminator 2.
I agree with you 100%.
It's so good.
I remember seeing that movie in the theater, and it's funny because it is rated R, and there's obviously a lot of things in that movie that I remember seeing it at a very young age as well. And then 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, I remember that they had toys, and I thought that this was great. There were all kinds of cool Terminator 2 toys, but that movie alone is phenomenal. Is phenomenal. And what would you say is your favorite scene in Terminator 2?
Dude, that's so hard.
I mean, I can tell you mine, but
all right, give me yours. Tell me it's this.
No, I wish. As a kid, the scene where he's John Connor's on his motorbike in the LA River, and Arnold comes to save him, and then the semi truck over the bridge. To me, that as a kid blew my mind. I thought that was the coolest thing, that they drove a truck off of the bridge and it was still going into the LA River.
I would say that watching that movie in the theater was the greatest father-son experience I've ever had in my entire life. Popcorn the size of my body, a cherry Coke, and then just being like, oh, the entire movie. But yeah, I can't think of a scene that I don't like in it. Actually, whenever quarantine popped off, so my wife is originally from Brazil, and she didn't move to the States until she was like a early teenager. And so she always jokes around where she's like, anything before 1995, I probably didn't see it because it just didn't come to my, my city where I live. And so she knows how much I love all these old action movies. And so the beginning of quarantine, I was like, all right, every Sunday it's action movie night. And we would watch all these movies. We watch Terminator 2 and Bloodsport and Lionheart and, Out for Justice and Mission Impossible 2. And every movie she was like, how old were you when you watched this? I was like, 7, 8. And she's like, you should never let a child watch these things. I'm like, I turned out fine. I go, if we ever have a kid, trust me, 5 years old, I'm going to put on Terminator 2 for him, teach him the meaning of life.
Very similar to my upbringing. I remember watching scary movies at a very, very young age, and having those conversations of going back and watching it and being like, I should have never seen this movie. I should have never seen this movie at 8 years old. But we both turned out okay. At least I like to think we have.
When I was 4 years old, my dad allowed me to go. We lived on base housing, and he allowed me to go across the street and watch Nightmare on Elm Street Part 1 with some older kids. And I did not shower. I would not go into the bathroom with the door shut for about 4 years because I was convinced Freddy was going to come out of the drain. And to this day, Freddy Krueger is the only monster that has truly scared me. I mean, I remember even like when I was in 7th grade, I didn't want to tell anybody, but I was still like terrified Freddy was going to come and get me. It took a long time for me to get over that. But see, the action stuff.
But I agree with you. In a sense, Freddy is very real. And I had this discussion with Nate, my buddy Nate, who is also on the show. Like, you can technically outrun Jason or Michael Myers, right? In theory, you can outrun, Leatherface. But Freddy, eventually you have to go to sleep. You have to fall asleep at some point. There's no way to avoid him, and that to me was terrifying as a young child. And now as an adult too, it's like, oh, well, you could stay up as long as you want, but you will eventually fall asleep.
Absolutely. And then the most terrifying part of it is that then when Nancy brings him into the real world,
yeah,
and you're like, well, this is horse shit. He's everywhere. That's why Wes Craven's New Nightmare was so cool to me. Like the idea of Freddy actually coming into the real world and then hunting down the cast of Nightmare on Elm Street. I was like, this is genius.
So getting back to, I mean, I could talk about this stuff all day, which I love, but getting back to you were in a band. When did you join the band Stick to Your Guns?
I joined the band Stick to Your Guns at the end of 2011, 2012. I was in the band that I was in right before that was this band called Evergreen Terrace, and Stick to Your Guns and Evergreen Terrace had toured together quite a few times.
Obviously a Simpsons reference, correct?
Absolutely. I loved The Simpsons as well. Whenever I was a kid. And a funny story about that is whenever The Simpsons first started airing, I remember my parents were completely fine. My mom and stepdad were completely fine with me watching it. And then there's an episode, it's got to be in one of the first couple of seasons, but I want to say they're out to eat and Bart lips off to Homer. And he's like, I don't give a damn. And my parents flipped out. They're like, this is insubordination. This is teaching you to not respect authority. No more Simpsons. So then I'd have to like sneak over to a friend's house to watch Simpsons, or like have friends record it on VHS. And it was equivalent watching Simpsons and like watching porn. I had to be just as like secretive about, And so, yeah, but it was a Simpsons reference. Yeah. And so I had become friends with the guys in Stick to Your Guns over the years through touring. And then one day they just hit me up and they're like, hey, we need a guitar player. And at that time, things were kind of ending with Evergreen Terrace. So it just kind of just made the transition.
And you have a member of the band, George, who's also loves everything pop culture, Disney. I know Disneyland, Disney. Pro wrestling. Do you guys have a lot of pop culture debates while you guys are on tour? Are there things that maybe he has introduced you to that you've never heard of, and vice versa?
George is so well educated on literally everything that a lot of times we're just like, George, tell us about this. And then he'll be like, well, actually, the real guy that invented Spider-Man is this, like this and that. And so he'll give me documentaries and stuff like that sometimes to watch on things that I'm not really familiar with, like some comic book stuff, or he loves like watching wrestling while we're on tour. So whenever there's certain matches or big events going on, he'll be like, I'm coming to my hotel room, like, at the end of the night, I said, come to my room, I recorded it, we're going to watch it. Or, like watching Chopped videos, for an hour and a half and stuff like that, or just talking about like the drama that's going on. So it's more like his love and knowledge of all things pop culture is like, that's like my hobby. Yeah. Like my hobby is George Smith's love for his hobbies.
He does have a love of pop culture. Is there anything that he tries to get you into that you're just like, you know what, your love of Disneyland is maybe not my love for Disneyland, or like you said, I enjoy wrestling, but maybe I'm not as obsessed about it as much as you are?
No, I think the only thing that I was like, nah, I'm not really going to get into this was whenever he started playing Magic a lot. And then I was like, what? This just sounds too wild for me. Like,
not that it's bad. I've watched people play Magic. I wish that I could be good at Magic in these card playing games, these role playing games. I went to a Comic-Con where a kid smoked me with a starter deck, and he looked at me as if I was the dumbest person on the planet.
Old moron.
Yeah, he was like, "Oh, this guy doesn't know how to play," and he was like, I just remember looking over his shoulder, like, I wouldn't do that, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna totally just getting killed." Now, this is obviously the show Get Super has some ties into fitness. You are obviously how we met was through a gym here in LA. How do you maintain? Well, first of all, why is fitness important to you, especially when you are on the road? You have very little time. You've already mentioned that. How does fitness play a part in your life, both on the road and off the road?
Oh, I didn't play sports as a kid, and other than in third grade, I played soccer, and we were the worst team in the league, and we lost every game except for one that we tied in, and this girl kicked me in the nuts, and then like 10 years later, I ended up dating her. But anyway, and then she kicked me in the nuts.
What a sidebar, by the way.
Then like 6 months into the dating, she really kicked me in the nuts. I was never like really interested in sports. And I know a lot of times like fitness goes hand in hand with sports. And it wasn't until I was, I don't know, in my early 20s that a friend was like, hey, I have the Florida State University bench pressing program. You want to go to the gym on the Navy base and do it? And I was like, yeah, if nothing else to do, I'm home from tour. And then so it kind of just became like, it was fun for me just to see like, oh, like you can lift this much weight. And then if you keep doing it, then you can lift a little bit more and then a little bit more. And I think it was just like a natural, seeing like yourself getting better at something. So I think that was my initial like attraction to it. And then obviously you see the physical change. But I think what really has kept me interested in any type of fitness over the years is for me, it just kind of, as lame as it sounds, it's kind of the one time of my day where I'm able to completely stop thinking about everything else, any issue that's going on. Even like whenever I'm on tour, if we've had some horrible situation where the bus is broken down and, there was a riot at the show and someone got stabbed and the cops are coming, all this stuff. It's
or
like,
you almost get kidnapped in Egypt.
Yeah. Or things like that. And then it's like, you know what, I'm going to go grab this kettlebell and I'm just going to swing it for an hour and just kind of break away, because, you got to be so aware and mindful whenever you are exercising. Because I've definitely learned when you're not, that you end up breaking your back or your arms or your legs or your neck or everything else that I've injured before, which you've witnessed many times before. So it's like, I think that it's really helped me learn mindfulness. And then like, I also have like a meditation practice. So I think it's kind of helped me transfer into that. But really, I think a lot of times it's, especially on tour, you're just sitting around so much. You're riding in a van, you're flying in a plane, you're laying on a bus, and then you get to the venue. And then after gear's loaded in and sound check, then you're just sitting in a room. And it's like real easy. Like, I understand why I've watched so many people throughout the years on tour become alcoholics, become drug addicts, because it can get very, very boring. And then you're also just start turning into a blob. Yeah. Because it's like, if you're not motivated, in day 30 of tour, you're exhausted. So you're not like, I want to walk around the city. And so so I think for me, that's just been something that's kind of like kept me alive, kept me awake, and also just given me a moment to break away a lot of times from other people, just to have a little bit of time to myself. And, your endorphins start going and you just feel better afterward. And it's a great excuse to eat junk.
Yeah. I mean,
you're like, well, I did 100 burpees. I can eat this cake.
Maybe 200 burpees, then you can eat the cake. But I like that answer a lot. I mean, obviously, jokingly, I wish you would have said it was because you saw Arnold in Terminator 2, shirtless, and that's what you wanted to be. But
that's your answer.
Well, all jokes aside, though, it is important to there are a lot of vices when you're on the road. And I think that it's really kind of cool that you see these certain things happening to other people, friends, this, that, and the other, and you decided to go the completely different direction. And I think that there are also a lot of healthy habits. You mentioned, obviously, working out when there's these downtimes, or somebody like George, for example, reading comic books or playing Magic instead of going the other route, which is drinking or doing drugs. I think there's a lot to be said in this kind of day and age of whether it be musicians or actors or wrestling, their addictions have gone from these extremely dangerous vices to video games and working out.
Right.
And that's not necessarily such a bad thing, especially when, not to sound old, but like when you and I were growing up, most people looked down on comic books and Magic the Gathering and, and these kind of nerdy things, and, the way that, we work out this, functional fitness, high intensity style of working out is completely different from somebody like an Arnold or a Hogan or a Ultimate Warrior worked out. And, we're choosing different paths as far as making sure that we're doing things safe and effectively and not doing things incorrectly. And I think that that's such a huge testament, especially with your lifestyle. I mean, maybe not now because you're stuck at home, but when you're on the road, do you think that you inspire people in a way that maybe, Arnold or, Macho Man Randy Savage or, any of these other heroes of yours kind of inspired you? Do you think people look up to you and say, hey, like Josh is working out, I want to do that? Or, hey, Josh is doing like, I want to do that.
I mean, I think it sounds ridiculous to compare anything I've ever done to those people, but I think that, especially on tour, I think a lot of times there are other guys that maybe do kind of casually work out when they're not on tour. And then they see that I'm doing something and they're like, hey, do you care if I work out with you? And I'm like, no, please do. And so I think sometimes it's cool, like just to have I think the biggest thing is because I usually do have a lot of stuff with me. Like if we're touring in the States, I usually have a squat rack, 450 pounds worth of weight, a couple barbells, a plyo box, some slam balls, kettlebell. You know what I mean? Like I have everything that you really would need. So I think some people look at that as like, oh man, he's got all this stuff. I should probably just take advantage of it. Or he's doing it every day. I could try to do it. And sometimes they stick with it and sometimes they don't. But I think that, I think that anytime you're in a situation where you're kind of like, I don't want to say trapped in a negative way, but where you're limited in like what you can do and where you can go, it's natural for you to look around and go, okay, well, what's everybody else doing? Okay, everybody else is, playing cornhole. Then I'm going to go over there and play cornhole because I need to do something. I want to interact with people. Oh, these guys are working out. I'll try that. Or these guys are playing Magic. I'll try that. Or these guys are reading comic books or whatever. So I think it's easy to kind of like find someone on tour who's doing something that you're slightly interested in and kind of team up with them. And that happens, I think, quite often.
And you said it, you're very lucky because you're able to travel in the States with this equipment that you have acquired, throughout the course of a couple of years. But when you're on tour across, the globe, you can't carry all this stuff, and you're able to you still keep up that fitness routine, which is great. You do a lot of body weight stuff. You do a lot of, stuff in your hotel room or, at the venue. I mean, the workout that we'll be doing, in a little bit is a prime example of that. But what would you say to somebody, you obviously Stick to Your Guns has a huge fan base. Sideshow Collectibles has a huge fan base. Dead Boys Fitness has a huge fan base. What would you say to somebody who maybe is kind of on the fence in the sense that like, look, I don't want to work out at a gym, maybe especially now, and work out 3 hours a day, but I also don't want to do anything super crazy like high intensity functional fitness. Like what is a good starting point for someone that, obviously looks at themselves and like, maybe I don't have the healthiest habits. Maybe I don't have the healthiest lifestyle. Mm-hmm. What is something that you would recommend to them to make those small changes to help them improve their lifestyle?
I think first and foremost, the really important thing to do if you are someone who's stuck at home, like many of us are right now, is to find a space, whether that's in your backyard, in your front yard, inside your house, whatever it is, but find that space and try to make that, okay, this is the space that I exercise in. Like I really subscribe to every space having like kind of like a designated function. That's why like I don't have a TV. We have like a room that has a TV in it. Like our TV is not in our living room. We don't have a TV in our bedroom because it's like our living room is for, relaxing and talking and having people over and, listening to, records or something like that, but being more social. And then the bedroom is for sleeping and, you know what I mean? And it's like, so then we have a room where it's like, that's where our TV is and that's our entertainment. And that's where we go there with that intention. So I think that if you kind of create a space for you, like, this is where I work out. And even if that means this is where I do 50 push-ups, 100 push-ups, 50 air squats, 100 air squats, whatever it is, this is where I go and I do that every day. I think that like mentally starts to kind of motivate you. And that's one of the biggest challenges when I'm on tour, because I don't have that consistency. It's always like I get there and then I'm like walking around the venue to see, okay, where can I not feel embarrassed? Mm-hmm. Or I'm like in the back parking lot trying to figure out a space or a spot. And sometimes I can't. So then I try to look up a gym and go there. But I know that not everybody's going to do that. But I think it's just about finding that space. And then also just understanding that like it should be a slow climb. I don't understand so many people's mentality is like, well, I'm here. I just want to be here. Because I think historically, everyone that does that also just falls just as hard. And like for me, like my biggest struggle probably throughout the years has been in my nutrition. And every time it's because I've done that. It's like, okay, you know what? I'm going to go strict this, strict that. And I'm like, phew, and then it maintain it for a month. And then I go, no, lava cake every day, And so and that was one of the cool things for me about quarantine is that I was really able to go, okay, well, you don't have an excuse now. You have to cook, and you have full control over what you're eating. Because a lot of times on tour, it's like, this is what's for catering, or this is what's around the venue. And so you're kind of sometimes feel like you're like a little bit stuck with your decisions and eating. And so for me, it was like this time I really dialed in my nutrition, and I was like almost mind blown 3 months into it that I'm like, oh, wait, I've actually created new habits, and I'm still enjoy some of the stuff that I historically love, but I'm not like craving it all the time. I'm not wanting that all the time. I'm wanting to eat better because I see a difference in the way that I look or the way that I feel. And I think it's the same way for anyone who's starting off with fitness. It's like, just take it slow, and then just inform yourself and find that space. Yeah. And also, and focus on a few easy movements and focus on a few easy habits nutrition wise. It sounds hard, it feels hard, but at the end of the day, after a couple weeks or a month, you start creating those habits, and it's just part of your life.
Yeah. And I couldn't ask for a better spokesperson when you simply say, look, take your time, let it be a slow, gradual, raise. And at the same time too, focus on good form and technique so you don't injure yourself. Because I've also seen the other end of the spectrum, that people try to do all the things at once. They try to move really, really quickly, and they end up hurting themselves because they're not doing things correctly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really appreciate and enjoy that answer. Well, before we get into the workout, which is something that, you've done on tour, if you can book, obviously I'm a big pro wrestling fan. I always mention that to people in case they don't know already, but I'm a big pro wrestling fan.
I know.
I want, yes, you do. If you, Josh James, could book a pop culture main event at WrestleMania, it could be anybody. It could be Josh James versus Freddie in a no holds barred match. It could be Arnold Schwarzenegger versus Jean-Claude Van Damme versus Steven Seagal in a triple threat ladder match for a contract for some movie. You can make it whatever you want. What would your pop culture main event at WrestleMania be, and why?
I mean, a triple threat, Arnold, Van Damme, Steven Seagal, maybe throw Chuck Norris in there. Like, that's going to be mind blowing. I was going to say Weird Al versus Captain Crunch.
Oh, Weird Al versus Captain Crunch. Is there any kind of stipulation, or is it just a straight one-on-one match?
One-on-one match.
Wow.
Cage match.
Oh, cage match. Okay. All right. And is there something on the line? Like, is Weird Al's accordion on the line? Is Captain Crunch's bowl of crunch berries on the line? Or is it just
the fate of humankind is on the line?
Wow. And
because that's Captain Crunch and Weird Al. That's the box that we live in now. You can interpret that however you want to.
Okay. Well, I like your match. I like your match setup. I'm a little concerned that the fate of humanity is based on Weird Al and Captain Crunch, but I'll take it. All right. Well, we're going to pause for a moment. We're going to get ready for this workout. I know, Josh James, you are excited. There it is. Deck of cards coming up in just a moment. All right, everybody, welcome back. Today's workout is called the Deck of Cards workout. This is something that Josh has used on tour. It's a real simple premise. What you're going to do is you're going to grab a deck of cards like Josh James has in his hand. Now, the way this workout goes is each card has a suit, right? So the clubs, the hearts, the diamonds, they're all going to be assigned a movement. So in this case, hearts are going to be squats, clubs are going to be sit-ups, diamonds are jumping jacks, and the spade is burpees. Now, every time you pull a card, there is a number assigned to the card. So, for example, Josh is pulling a card. What is that? The 4 of clubs. That is 4 clubs. Sit-ups. You'll do 4 sit-ups. He'll pull another card. Let's say it's 3 of hearts. It's 3 air squats. He'll pull another card. Let's say it's 8 diamonds, or that one, right? That's a suit.
Jack of diamonds.
You got Jack of diamonds. So in that case, it is 10. So the Jack, the Queen, the King are all 10 reps. With the exception of one, the ace will be 11 reps. So hopefully Josh will not pull all of the aces at once. We're only going to do a few cards, but the whole goal of this is to go through the entire deck. All right. So Josh is going to shuffle it up Vegas style. And we're going to get going. So we're going to do just 10 cards for, demonstration purposes, right, Josh?
That's correct.
All right, here we go.
All right.
First card is
10 of hearts.
10 of hearts. That's 10 squats. So again, you're looking for 10 squats, squatting all the way down, hip crease below parallel, and then standing all the way up. Try to get back so you can see me. 3, 4. Look at that perfect squat from Josh. 6, 7, 8.
It's because I have 9, no shoes on.
And 10. Me too, buddy. Me too. All right. Next card.
Oh, we lucked out. 2 of diamonds.
2 of diamonds. Jumping jacks. Here we go. Ready and go. 2. Let me pull my camera back a little bit. All right. There you go. Next up.
6 of spades.
Ooh, 6.
What is that?
Burpees. 6 burpees.
Mother.
All right. Here we go. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. That's what, 3 cards?
All right. 4th round. 6 of clubs.
6 of clubs. That's 6 sit-ups. 6 sit-ups.
Ugh.
3, 4, 5, 6. All right. Next up.
7 of clubs.
All right. 7 sit-ups.
I'm really getting those abs today, baby.
1, 2, 3. Again, we're looking for full range of motion all the way down, all the way up. 7.
Oh, please don't leave any more clubs. 3 of hearts.
3 of hearts. All right. 3 air squats. We've hit them all so far, right? We've done jumping jacks, burpees, sit-ups, squats.
Yep.
What's coming up?
I think it's rest. 4 of diamonds.
4 diamonds, 4 jacks. Here we go. 3, 4. All right. What card are we on?
We're on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 5 of hearts.
8, 5 of hearts. All right. We got 2 more cards to go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. Card number 9.
This is the thing that I love about doing this workout is because you think that sometimes it'll be simple and then you just get it back to back. 9 of hearts.
9 squats. 9 squats. That's okay. Leg day for you. Leg day for me. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right.
All right.
Our 10th card.
Last card. Oh.
Oh,
Ace of spades.
Ace of
We
spades.
got 11 burpees, baby.
11 burpees. The dreaded ace of spades. Here we go. Was hoping we would not get that one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
You're getting slow in your old age.
What a fun day. What a fun workout, Josh. Again, a deck of cards, something you could do in that space
Anywhere.
that Josh James was talking about. A little workout space. 4 simple movements. Squatting. If you can't squat all the way down, squat to a chair. Squat to a target. Quarter squats are fine. Sit-ups. Sit up as far as you can. Jumping jacks, burpees. Again, all of these movements are scalable. All of these movements are strictly body weight. And we only did 10 cards. And look how blown up I am. I don't know about you. Look at that.
I'm for sure going to do the rest of these as soon as we log off.
You better. You better. Josh, thanks so much for joining us. It's always a real treat. And
Thank you.
maybe next time we'll hear the Egypt story, one of my favorite stories of all time.
You know what? I have a feeling I'm going to be in this house for a few more months. So just let me know.
Please follow Josh James on social media at Josh James XXX. Follow Stick to Your Guns on social media. Anything else? Should we watch Fox, Fern's brand new show next?
Yeah, my wife's got a show coming out October 6th on Fox. It's called Next, and that's going to be a good time.
I can't wait. With Iron Man's dad, right?
Yeah, John Slattery.
I was just going to say.
And it's got Jason, who is the FBI agent from Ozark.
Oh, nice.
Psycho FBI agent. Yeah, he's in it too, and he kicks ass. He's great.
All-star cast, but most importantly, it's Fern. Fern's in the show, so that's what we're tuning in for.
Yes.
Iron Man's dad, Fern, yeah. All right.
I can't marry Iron Man's dad.
Well, Josh, thank you again so much for joining us. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Please don't forget to stay inside show, but most importantly, ready, Josh? Don't forget to let your geek side show. See ya. Hold on.
Why do you cry?
Hey, did you like that video? Be sure to subscribe by clicking the S icon on your screen and click that bell icon to be notified whenever a new video is posted. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to let your geek side show.